Episode 6 opens with Team RWBY standing outside a door in one of Atlas Academy's many hallways. RWBY is looking up and down the hall for another door while Weiss points at the sign above the entrance indignantly. "RWBY, it says Armory." RWBY groans in frustration. "Yeah, but which armory? There were like 4 of them on the tour. Did anyone catch which Penny said was the main one?" Yang shakes her head. "Gonna be honest, I zoned out after like 5 minutes?" To which Blake adds sheepishly, "Yeah, same." RWBY slumps, whining. "Penny said she'd meet us here. Where is she?" Weiss rolls her eyes. "It's 6:57, RWBY. Either she's just running late or she's already inside. Why don't we just step in and ask? I'm sure they'll understand." RWBY motions to the sign. "It says it doesn't open for another 3 minutes." Weiss shakes her head and moves towards the door. "It'll be fine, I promise." Weiss steps forward and opens the door, and the team enter a cavernous room laden with various pieces of hardware, equipment, and workbenches, ranging from rudimentary, though sleek, forges to incredibly advanced precision machining tools. To their delight, Penny is immediately visible, lying on one of the workbenches, while an obscured figure operates a futuristic-looking welding tool on one of her uncovered leg thrusters. She sits up with no problem, smiling and giving them an excited wave. "Hello, friends! You may want to shield your eyes!" Yang is halfway through a "what?" when the mechanic activates an arc welder as he works on Penny's leg thruster. The entrance is filled with blinding blue-white light, and all of the girls, save RWBY, flinch as they're blinded by it. The mechanic finishes working, and the girls uncoil. Yang absently mutters, "My spots have spots." Weiss scowls, rubbing at her eyes. "A little more warning would have been nice." Blake is the last to speak, blinking blurrily at RWBY. "RWBY? You okay? You didn't even move." RWBY blinks back at her with a shrug. "Oh, yeah, I'm kinda used to that. When I first got into weapon work, Crow never told me about welding masks, so I just used 4 of Yang's sunglasses taped together." There's a beat of silence as the 3 of them stare at her in horror. Yang humming, "Oh, so that's why you didn't have eyebrows in the 6th grade." A jolly voice breaks the moment. "Sorry about that, folks." Approaching them is Pietro, whose design is largely unchanged from canon, save the addition of a welder's mask and gloves for this scene in specific, and the addition of retractable wheels on his spider chair, which allows for much smoother transportation across level surfaces. He takes off his mask and gloves and puts on a fashionable flat cap. "Just needed to make an adjustment on Penny. Thought it'd be safe since we don't open for a few more minutes." The 3 pairs of, still somewhat bleary eyes float over to Weiss, who stands up straighter, gracefully throwing an upward palm in RWBY's direction. "Of course, it was rude to jump the gun like that, RWBY." RWBY stares at her in bafflement, waving her hands indignantly in the air and floundering to find her words. The man just laughs. "Nothing rude about it. I'm always excited to see new faces. I just hope your eyeballs didn't get cooked after that." Stepping out from behind his chair is Penny, beaming like a 1,000-watt bulb. "Team RWBY, I would like you to meet my father, Pietro Polendina, the Overseer of Arms and Development for Atlas, Honorary Professor of Combat Arms Design, Philanthropic Operator of..." Pietro shines his own broad smile at Penny's clear attempts to show off her father. Shaking his head, he places a hand on her shoulder to calm her before he warmly speaks to the girls. "It's so nice to finally meet my daughter's friends. I hope Atlas is treating you girls well?" With his title announced, the 4 stand up a little bit straighter and RWBY rubs the back of her head. Yes, sir. It's nice to meet you too, sir. We're, here to fix our gear, sir." Pietro laughs at RWBY's fumbling. "Oh, don't worry about the title." He moves his chair back towards the table he was working on to clean up his equipment, with the 5 girls following after him. "Largely ceremonial these days. Got a younger generation with fresh faces that do all the heavy lifting. I'm just here to make sure nothing important explodes too badly. Most of the time, I'm actually helping the first years find their footing and doing clinic work down in Mantle." Stowing most of the tools and compartments along his chair, he turns to them and motions to the whole of the space around them. "Ironwood messaged me ahead with all the permissions you need to work in here." He leans in close with a conspiratorial laugh. "But between you and me, I'd have let you 4 have run of the shop just for being such a good friend to my girl." They all spare Penny a glance, who clearly overheard them, and she waves at them cheerily. He leans back up and moves towards an administrator's desk in the corner of the room. "You 4 be careful now, and if you need any help, I'm always willing to lend a hand." RWBY crosses her arms and nods confidently. "We won't need the help. I've got us all squared away." Blake elbows RWBY's side. "Don't be rude, RWBY." And Pietro just laughs good-naturedly. Not a problem. I know the type. Come along now, Penny. Let's see how that thruster's handling. Penny hops on her heel and politely chimes, "Yes, father." "Farewell, Team RWBY. I wish you all the best of luck." The four wave the father-daughter pair off before turning to the work at hand. RWBY pumps her arm in the air. "Alright, Team RWBY, we're about to embark on our most important mission yet." The three look at her with bemusement. "You all know what we need to do, so let's get out there and kick some butt! Team RWBY, mission commence!" She pumps her fist again, and Blake and Yang join her, mutedly, in cheering. Hi! Weiss rolls her eyes at the goofiness, crossing her arms. Fun as that may sound, Mirror Naster is perfect just as it is. It just needs a good sharpening and polish. I only came here to restock on dust, so if you'll excuse me. Weiss turns on her heels and begins to walk towards a row of powdered dust dispensers, similar to those seen back in Volume 1. Ruby's voice carries on after her. "Oh, Weiss, what if I make you some speed loaders?" Weiss stops in place, thinks for a moment, and cocks her head back towards Ruby. "I'm listening." This content and the rest of the content on Celtic Phoenix is brought to you by the wonderful people supporting the channel through Patreon. For just $1 or more, you can gain access to the Tundra Discord server, where you can interact with me and a whole host of my fellow internet colleagues, such as the other members of Team Frostbite and the Team Jacked podcast. Become a part of our regular bad fanfiction nights that happen every Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time by joining our chat and adding your commentary to the reading. You can also join by becoming a member of the Celtic Phoenix YouTube channel, with the additional bonus of gaining access to a bunch of sweet emoticons during every one of our streams, such as the Team Jacked podcast, which airs every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But if either of those are too much for you, you can always subscribe to the channel, enable alerts, like this video, and share it around to all your friends. Thank you all so much for watching, and we now return you to your regularly scheduled fixing. We cut over to a work table with Ruby rubbing her hands eagerly and Yang standing beside her. Standing straight and coughing into her fist, Ruby very delicately holds out her hand and closes her eyes. "Yang, Ember Celica, if you will." Yang places the singular bracelet in Ruby's palm. "I only brought the one," she explains, flexing her new golden robotic arm. "And this time I'm opting not to go built-in. Hard alloy all the way through." Ruby hums appreciatively and places the bracelet down on the table, activating the mechanism so it pops into full form. She pulls over a large magnifying glass and inspects it thoroughly, humming and mumbling to herself, running through different small problems and concerns that might need to be addressed. Yang's brows narrow as Ruby mutters, eventually saying, "You know, I really just need a replacement for the..." before Ruby bolts straight up. She nods confidently and says, I see. Well, in that case, back to basics." Yang only gets one horrified moment to realize that Ruby wasn't listening to her at all before Ruby reaches down and in a single smooth motion, dismantles Ember Celica all the way down to its base components. The parts spill out from each other in a crude pyramid, Yang watching with bulging eyes. We cut to Blake, who is lining up Shroud, Blush, and Wilt on her own workbench, looking at them pensively before we can hear Yang shrieking, "Ruby!" Blake turns in their direction only to see Yang storming off over to join Blake instead of hanging around her sister. Yang is muttering to herself, "I'm not going to kill her, I'm not going to kill her, I'm not going to kill her." As Yang sits on a stool in front of Blake's station, Blake asks, "Yang? You okay?" Yang snaps up to look at Blake. "I'm not going to kill her, yeah, I'm fine. Yang lets out a frustrated sigh. Ruby wants to do things her way, she can do things her way. Who am I to get in the way? It's not like it's my weapon or anything. She crosses her arms and pouts. Blake smiles wryly. Well, now that you're here, maybe you can help me get some ideas? I'm not quite sure where I want to start with this. Yang blinks out of her funk. Oh yeah, you wanted my help. She looks down at the three weapons and slowly begins to frown, particularly looking at the glinting red blade. For a moment, the sheen from the overhead lights glints in a way reminiscent of Adam's old mask before flickering back. Are you sure you want to use that? Blake's face remains neutral as she very hesitantly rests a finger on the red metal. I am, but I'm nervous about it. Looking up to Yang, she asks, Does it make you uncomfortable? Yang stares at the red blade, the fingers on her mechanical arm flexing open and closed. A little bit, honestly. That's when Blake begins to frown, and Yang picks up on it almost immediately, rushing to stymie that. Maybe run me through why? That might help. Blake stays pensive, even as her shoulders relax just a bit. Back when the White Fang started to shift focus, protests started to turn more violent. Sometimes we were just protecting ourselves, other times, I won't say we were always in the right, but it was definitely a point of concern. We started to arm ourselves with whatever we could get our hands on. It's how I wound up with Gamble's Shroud. It was just some stock weapons one of our members cobbled together for me. Her hands briefly ghost over Shroud, almost lovingly, smiling at a bittersweet memory. The smile fades. Adam already had a reputation for fighting humans to protect the other faunus. In hindsight, I don't think he ever stopped fighting, even after we knew they were safe. Every single time, he sounded so justified to keep on going. He ended up saving Sienna's life when she was a new lieutenant. This sword was a thank you to him for that. Blake closes her eyes, trying to recall something. But it is more than a sword. This is a symbol. It is a warning of the teeth that we bear against the humans that would feed us lies, that would promise us equality and deliver us only scraps. It is with this blade that we will protect ourselves with one claw and drag our way to the top of the mountain with the other. Again, a bittersweet smile. She always gave good speeches. Yang watches this, clearly engrossed in Blake's words. So, where are you going with this exactly? Blake's face drops back to neutrality, re-examining Adam's weapons. This blade was made to protect faunus, to protect everyday people from the cruelties in the world, and it was twisted into a weapon of revenge. She makes a show of gripping the handle of the blade and spinning away from the table, swinging it down in an uneven slash. Staring at the wobble it has in her hands, Blake finishes. Maybe I can use it for what it was supposed to be, not what Adam twisted it to be. Eyes glued to Blake, Yang slowly comes to a stand beside her. Silently, through only nudges and body language, Yang asks Blake to hand the sword over, and she does after only a moment of hesitation. Holding Wilt by its grip in her left hand, she runs her robotic hand across the blade, inspecting it even as her fingers begin to tremble and jitter across it. She pulls her hand back into a fist, still trembling, but she turns to Blake with a smile that says everything. It's good metal. No use letting it go to waste. Blake brightens almost immediately, and Yang nods over to the workbench. Come on, I've got a few ideas. She rests the blade besides the other pieces as she starts talking. So, we should probably keep it kinda similar to what you're used to. The camera slowly pans away from them to where Ruby and Weiss are sorting through a pile of metal sheets. Ruby crinkles her nose at one as she inspects it, but smiles broadly at the one Weiss waves in front of her. Ruby takes it, it obscures the camera, and time cuts forward into a playful, music-only montage covering Team Ruby's work to re-equip themselves for their career as huntresses. We see Ruby and John talking in a hallway, with him opening his shield and Ruby taking avid notes at its function. We then hop over to Yang examining Blush, accidentally ejecting the magazine which Blake scrambles to catch. Following that is Weiss in the workshop, taking careful measurements of Mirtnaster's cylinder before double guessing herself and measuring it again. The next segment appears from the perspective of a security camera, looking in on Roman and Neo's apartment. Neo jumps in surprise as Yang and Blake arrive for a visit. The footage cuts forward to show the three of them having a cup of tea together, and then cycles through different days as different combinations of Yang, Blake, Ruby, Ren, and Nora visit to play various games together, from cards to Jenga to Remnant the game. Then we slip away to a mall, where Ruby is about to walk into a clearance store which appears to be a mix of a Hot Topic and an army surplus, before being stopped by Weiss and Yang, both of whom shake their heads at Ruby. Ruby is dragged by her cape, practically kicking and screaming, towards the higher-end stores, with Blake in tow laughing into her knuckles on the way. We flip through Ruby trying on different outfits, and showing them off to her team outside the changing room, suffering the whole time despite their generally positive responses. The one time she seems really happy is with an incredibly rugged utilitarian look save for her signature cape, but the rest of the girls clearly disapprove. With a silent groan, Ruby walks back into the changing room. From there we jump to the perspective of Ruby's scroll while they're eating at the cafeteria, looking up at her through the glass as she cycles through different missions. Her face shifts in time as she reads the descriptions and parameters, sorting through the various options as she goes. When she scrolls up, we transition back to the Oz apartment where Ruby, Yang, and Nora are visiting. Roman arrives to middling conversation from Ruby and Yang, while Nora seems a lot warmer by comparison. She playfully feigns punching him in the gut, then actually does twice when he flinches. He basically doubles over in pain, but just smiles and bears it. Time skips forward to Roman challenging Ruby, then Nora, then Blake, then Weiss to games of chess, which she is very smug about winning, though less so each time. We return to the armory, in particular its forge, with Blake. She is sitting at a drafting table, working on the schematics for her new weapon. Sitting back pensively, she chews on the end of a pencil after becoming stuck on some aspect of it. Yang, passing by with a crate of supplies, takes one glance at the schematic. Leaning over Blake's shoulder, she reaches over and gently removes the pencil from between Blake's teeth. She draws a few quick lines on the schematic, nods in satisfaction, and places the pencil back into Blake's mouth. It falls out shortly after because Blake's mouth is parted in awe at the obvious solution. As Yang walks away, Blake shoots her an appreciative smile. Yang approaches RWBY and Weiss, dropping the crate for them and getting passing thumbs up from RWBY as she helps Weiss pour molten metal into a cast. Weiss's hands are trembling with uncertainty, out of her element, and almost spills the pot before RWBY steps in to steady her arms. From here, there's a brief moment where we cut away to the girls returning to a very sparse dorm, only to flicker through a sequence of them adding small bits and bobs that bring small amounts of personality to the space. This includes a moment where Yang tries to park the still damaged Bumblebee inside, before Weiss drags her back into the room by the ear and makes her remove it. The next jump is to Blake examining a collection of one-headed firearms, carefully laid out on the desk of a shooting range by a proud-looking John. She draws one with a digital readout and lets loose a few rounds. She seems pleased until RWBY walks over to them, face clearly unamused. She lifts a magnet to the side of the pistol, and immediately the readout blue screens. Blake and John blink at RWBY as she takes the gun, points it down range, and demonstrates that it refuses to fire. Then RWBY drops the magazine, racks out the remaining round in the chamber, and carelessly tosses it before moving on, leaving John to catch the blue-screened firearm. We return to the changing rooms at the mall, where Weiss is trying on different outfits, always satisfying 2 of her teammates, but never all 3. The only outfit that gets universal praise is a tuxedo. Weiss, however, finds it limits her movements, bunching up around her shoulders and knees when trying to do basic wide gestures. She shakes her head and rejects it herself, slipping back into the booth. We have one more visit to the Oz apartment lounge, as Neo is cheerily waving Yang and Weiss off. The guards outside close the door, and Neo physically slumps, as though drained. We can see her tired face when she turns to the side, and she stands there for a second disassociating, before her eyes flicker up towards the camera. A second later she rips her eyes away, and walks back into the room before we leave the scene. Back at the changing room, it's now Blake cycling through her own different wardrobe sets, the first set of which she's so heavily bundled she can barely move, and she soon falls over. This results in her teammates looking at each other, and they help her cycle through a series of more practical winter outfits, some with more layers, some with less. We transition back to the workshop, panning over to Weiss and RWBY inspecting one of Weiss's new speed loaders as the two comedically approve of each other's work with over-exaggerated goofy formality. Sliding past them, we find Blake and Yang staring at their worktop, Blake's incomplete weapon just out of frame. Yang's face is pensive, staring down at the schematics in frustration, while Blake is fondly watching Yang with amusement. After a lingering shot, there's a moment where Blake's expression goes from fondness to something warmer, which seems to catch her off guard. Blake blinks, and her eyes begin to flicker around as she becomes lost in thought, cheeks beginning to pink. This is cut off when Yang lets out a breath and shakes her head. Blake is knocked from whatever thought she is having. When she looks down at the schematics, it dawns on her how tired they both are, and she seems to shake her head in solidarity with Yang. Our last major moment in the montage takes us back to the changing rooms, where Yang is confidently showing off outfit after outfit with flair. Weiss and RWBY are generally unimpressed by her showboating, but Blake is clearly enjoying every outfit Yang tries on. Yang actually blushes at some of the praise, and shyly tucks a bit of hair behind her ear. Her hand brushes past some of the damaged ends, and her smile flattens out. The finger curls around the lock and tugs it so Yang can get a good look. Dissatisfied, Yang speaks, bringing the montage to an official end. "Hey, RWBY? Do you think you could help me with something?" We jump to the team's dorm room, with Yang seated in one of the few chairs, a towel thrown over her shoulders like a barber's cape. RWBY is behind her with a pair of scissors, looking a bit nervous. She glances over at the room's couch where Weiss and Blake are both sitting, the former painting her nails and the latter poring over weapon schematics. Next to each of them is a small portable fire extinguisher. You sure you want me doing this? Weiss would probably be better." Weiss looks over at RWBY confused. "Why would I be better exactly? Besides, I just started my nails, I'm not ruining that with Yang's shitting." RWBY chuckles awkwardly and Yang matches it with an earnest laugh. "No, RWBY, I really want it to be you." Still clearly anxious, RWBY replies, "Okay," before taking a careful snip at one of Yang's damaged tips like she's defusing a bomb. She squints, watching the lock drop to the ground, curling in on herself in fear. After a moment, Yang asks back, "Everything okay back there?" RWBY perks up. Oh yeah, I just, Quieting, Ruby leans forward and snips another strand of hair, slowly building her confidence. Yang, however, doesn't let the comment die. You know... what? Ruby takes a breath but keeps pace with the scissors. You've always been super sensitive about your hair, you know? Yang smiles, bittersweet, her eyes glazing over. Mom used to cut her hair, do you remember that? There's a stutter in Ruby's clipping, but she picks it back up quickly. Kinda. Yang closes her eyes, smiling fondly as she speaks. She always got so excited to trim it, said it was like playing with a warm cotton cloud. The smile sags. When she died, it didn't feel right to have other people touching it. That was what she did. Ruby glances up at her sister, concerned. So what changed? Yang gently opens her eyes, staring at the ground. Well, acid for one. Wish we had a little warning about that. Ruby groans in agreement. Tell me about it, the smell is burned into my nose. They both chuckle and Yang becomes more wistful. But I figured I needed someone's help to cut away the damage, and then I realized thinking about that didn't bother me as much as it used to. She pulls a strand of damaged hair between her fingers and stares at it, only for Ruby to snip it and surprise Yang. So I'm seeing if I can have someone do it for me, and I thought I'd be safe and ask you. Ruby stops snipping and looks judgmentally down at her sister, her voice playful. Oh, so I'm a guinea pig now, am I? Only for Yang to look up at her and very earnestly reply, You're the closest person I could think of to Mom. Ruby freezes, staring down at Yang in shock as water prickles in her eyes. She lunges forward, hugging Yang tightly from behind, only for Yang to scramble in alarm. Hey, scissors! Careful, careful! From the couch, both Blake and Weiss watch the two warmly. We focus mainly on Blake, who is still puzzling over the schematic in front of her. Face becoming pensive, Blake lets out a sigh, loud enough for the rest of the room to pick up on. Yang is the first to reach out, while Ruby is still working on her hair. Blake, I told you, we'll worry about that in the morning. You're allowed to give it a rest. Blake shakes her head, eyes never leaving the page. We're so close, though. It just feels like I'm rebuilding. Weiss sits up and Ruby looks over her shoulder, asking, Rebuilding... what do you mean? Blake stands, taking the schematic with her, beginning to pace. Every time I look at our design, all I see is Adam. I don't see any of me. Ruby's brow creases, and slowly she asks, Maybe using that sword wasn't such a good idea. Blake shakes her head. I want to use it for this. Back when we were together, when he was different, there was a part of him I don't want to forget. Ruby blinks in surprise at Blake, and Yang exclaims, You and him were dating? Weiss looks at Yang, baffled, and says, Seriously? You didn't pick up on that? Blake gives a weak chuckle and only replies, We did. He was a lot sweeter back then. She becomes dour again, and continues, So much of who I was in his shadow. It wasn't until I met you guys that I started to understand who I am. There's a brief moment of the three looking fondly between each other. But if I keep the sword, am I just going to be another him? She trails off, and there's a long, silent pause, save for Ruby's quiet snipping. Make all the same mistakes, or a whole series of new ones. Become some monster undeserving of being loved. She looks up, her eyes a little bleary, and is surprised as Yang breaks through the silence. No? You could hear a pin drop before she continues. You're Blake Belladonna, kick-ass huntress who's helping save the world. Blake is surprised by this before Weiss speaks up. You're far too in your head about this. You've been at this for days, maybe you just need a clean break. Ruby offers a wobbly smile. Yeah, I'm sure you'll find a way to make it your own. Yang looks at Blake with Mama Bear level energy. And about all that self-doubt talk, stow it. You're wonderful and everyone is lucky to have you. Blake smiles warmly at the three, but warmest at Yang's reassuring words. A snipping breaks the moment, sharper and louder than the ones before, and Blake looks over Ruby's shoulder. Eyes widening, she says, Ruby. Ruby looks at Yang's head and squeaks in fear. We get a close-up of Yang's face, too tight to see her hair. Rubes? Everything okay? What's happening back there? Ruby and Blake share an anxious glance before Ruby chuckles awkwardly. Well, it'll grow back. Yang blinks, her eyes becoming red. What will grow back, Ruby? Ruby's awkward laughter gets more and more panicked. Well, you know what they say, you can't fix something until it's broken, right? As Yang replies, I have never heard that in my life. The camera zooms in on Blake's face as an epiphany occurs to her. Twisting on her feet, she rushes out of the room. We cut to the perspective of the crafting bench, Blake unraveling a fresh sheet of paper before she begins drawing anew with quick, purposeful, and visually unseen simplicity and a new assuredness on her face. We crossfade to indicate a small amount of time has passed before Yang's voice cuts in over Blake's work. Hey, you know they're closing up shop soon, right? Blake looks up to see Yang approaching her and she double takes. We get the reveal of Yang's new haircut, significantly shorter than before. Yang catches Blake staring and rolls her eyes, clearly embarrassed. Don't say anything. Ruby, I said I was in for change. I'll live with it. Blake eases off the table. Oh, I was going to say it looks good. Yang blinks at Blake and scratches her neck awkwardly. Oh, thank you. You're not just saying that, right? Blake shakes her head emphatically. No, really, I think it suits you. Yang's face brightens. Really? Well, thanks. There's an awkward silence as the two stare at each other before Yang motions to the table. So... Blake looks back to the table and waves Yang over. Right, so I was thinking about our problem. Yang cocks her head, looking at the new design on the table. Blake then elaborates. I think we were overthinking everything. Yang nods, scratching her chin, and asks, This is what you want to make? Confidently, Blake answers with a grin. I'm sure. Yang, seeing the conviction on Blake's face, smiles back. One question. She grabs a plasma torch from the bench and lights the flame with a manic grin. Can I do it? We jump to outside Atlas, looking at the horizon where the sun is rising low in the sky, indicating the start of a new day. We get quick snippets of Team RWBY putting on their new ensembles, all to heroic, swelling music. It ends with them checking their weapons over, RWBY running crescent rows through its transformations before holstering it and sliding on a pair of high-tech goggles. Weiss adding her speed loaders to her belt pouch and checking the brake mechanism on Mutant Astra's cylinder. Yang opening and closing the improved Ember Celica 2.0, putting their triple barrels and buckler on full display. And finally, Blake, checking over the operation of her new weapon, Deadly Nightshade. Easily the most drastic change of anyone in the group, Deadly Nightshade is a synthesis that fuses the concept of both Adam's and Blake's previous weapons. It effectively serves as a longer version of Gamble's Shroud, using Wilt's red-stained sword as the base for a new folding gunblade design. The sheath is a combination of Shroud and Blush, becoming a secondary longsword for Blake to wield, while also housing a shotgun that can launch the main blade and be used independently. The change in length, balance, and armament will naturally require Blake to adapt fighting styles, which we'll get to see as Volume 7 progresses. The four, lined up accordingly, walk through one of Atlas's hallways towards a door. It opens onto an airship pad, casting them in daylight and letting us see them fully assembled as true huntsmen for the first time. RWBY smirks and turns to the other three. You guys ready? Receiving a round of nods, RWBY pumps her fist in the air and walks towards the waiting Manta, shouting, Banzai! The other girls follow suit, walking into the camera. As the camera frames RWBY's face, we fade in on a profile image on her scroll. Ironwood is in his office, looking at it, contemplative. He scrolls up, revealing full reports for each of the girls as well as Junior, Roman, and Neo. Without looking, he asks, This is everything you could find? Winter, who is standing at attention in front of his desk, replies, Yes, including everything I could find on my sister's absence. After a pause, she asks, Are you worried, General? He replies absently, almost a mumble. Just being pragmatic, Specialist. That'll be all. Winter gives a salute and leaves as Ironwood turns in his chair to face the window, still scrolling through the reports. The episode ends as a Manta flies off into the distant sunrise beyond the windows. Cut to black, end of episode.